Oh boy, you know we're cooking up something extraordinarily fierce today, ladies and gentlemen. So, first of all, thank you. I know I'll be saying this elsewhere, but first of all, I want to thank you, all of you, for 2,500 subscribers. I mean, literally back in January, we weren't even at 1,000, and literally in the span of 7 months, we have got to 2,500. I never anticipated this, nor did I even anticipate the large amount of people who would be not only following, but also are now starting to keep me up to date with a lot of things that are happening elsewhere on the internet. And, well, that just leads me to say we've got basically something I kind of wanted to sort of talk about for a while, because now, for those who are familiar with the channel Secret Limited, this was a YouTube channel that would upload one video a year in which Dark Side Phil was his primary source of discussion. Secret Limited's videos were very, very authentic because they featured little to no biased commentary from its creator, and it merely showcased Dark Side Phil's detractions, his denial, his accusations, his con artery sort of behavior, and the fact that if anybody even calls him out on this, they are basically an enemy of the King of Hate, as DSP has had that moniker for many, many years. And despite the fact that many people have straight up told him that he needs to get rid of this moniker because it's outdated and it makes him look a little bit tryhardy, especially at his age, which is, I think he's like early 40s or something like that. I would maybe late 30s. I'll be generous and say that. So anyway, you may have heard, by the way, that even though there was Secret Limited retired from YouTube, it meant we never got the top 10 worst moments of 2023, which was somewhat of a disappointment. But with that being said, one moment in particular really caught my attention, and that was the fact that apparently the number one worst moment of 2023 for Dark Side Phil was about some sort of podcast he did on March 16th called the Side Scrollers Podcast. I don't exactly know what I'm supposed to expect out of this, but I do know is that we are almost covering the whole podcast from start to finish. So we'll be here for basically 5 hours, ladies and gentlemen. And I kind of did. It was a sort of on my mind to do something quite different and special, but because how on earth can these guys go on for 5 hours? I mean, these guys must. I don't know what DSP has like got in his tank, but we're going to find out because DSP had sort of been a little bit on the defensive throughout 2022 regarding a bunch of videos that not only Secret Limited came out with, but videos that, well, I certainly like. Well, no, I didn't really come out with videos in 2022 about DSP because I was only really in it just to see what Secret Limited had to say that year. And the ideas I had about Darkside Phil were sort of cemented in the idea that even if the things that were said about him were not 100% true, there was enough evidence to suggest that Darkside Phil's the way he does, which is, again, I've talked about this before, about the way that DSP conducts his business online. It's not necessary. I mean, we know fine well that there's a lot of things to be said about the fact that he's claiming WWE champions on his business expenses, which must count for fraud or something in the line. That can't possibly be legal in the United States. Then, of course, you got to contend with the fact that because of his bankruptcy, it basically relieved him of nearly $100,000 of debt. And all Phil had to do about it was lie about quite a number of things on his bankruptcy hearing. I know I've talked about that story before, and if you haven't quite seen it for yourselves, I did talk about the worst moments of 2020, 21, and 22 in the videos like previously, which I'll just put in like lists and stuff like that, and like playlists and all the rest of it. But now we move into what I'm going to assume is just the podcast itself. But can I just say, going forward, is that I know fine well videos like these, I don't really know exactly what sort of influence or what sort of even response I'm probably even going to get from doing this, because I have like no context for who the side scrollers or even the people who do the podcast is. I know fine well that DSP apparently also did a podcast with Keemstar back in 2023 as well. And I also happen to know that DSP and Keemstar don't really get along that well. But now I'm going to go a little bit, just once again, a little bit deeper and say, I wonder, it doesn't bother me whatsoever if DSP sees the videos when I talk about him, and I don't really think DSP is like going to be that bothered about what I say about him, because he'll just say that I'm lying, saying it's not true, saying the things that happened in this were fabricated and taken out of context. I'm very familiar about DSP's sort of patterns for playing down things that maybe he should be a little bit more invested than others. But if DSP does have anything he wants to say, then I'm just going to come out and say, if DSP wants to say anything about me, if he wants to settle anything out, if he wants to make things clear, if he wants, like, if whatever DSP wants, he could just straight up ask me himself. I feel like that is probably the best way we can go about this. I mean, I don't know why this is apparently the way it is, and people suggesting that Phil wasn't the same afterwards. I mean, I'm not too sure about that. Phil, as far as I'm concerned, is pretty busy as it is on his YouTube channel and stuff like that. But once again, if you're new to the world of Darkside Phil, then here's basically everything you need to know. Darkside Phil was monicalled as the King of Hatred because he believed for such a long time that he was the best North American Street Fighter 2 Turbo player in the world, like all the way back in, 2008 or something like that. But even though, despite the fact that Phil was using a different version of Street Fighter 2 Turbo, not specifically like the original arcades version, and then through a series of bad decision making, a lot of very, very aggressive videos involving a copious amount of slurs, then following the incident in which Phil basically jacked off on stream without his knowledge, then through a series of other unfortunate events like his major partnership with Machinima shutting down, the pandemic forcing Phil into bankruptcy because he blew $40,000 on a mobile game called WWE Champions. Then his bank records got leaked, and then it was suspected that through copious amounts of eating at restaurants like every other day and drinking gin, that she had basically made her then wife, Kat. I think Phil, I know, has been in a previous relationship that went on for many years, but there's accusations about Phil basically force-feeding Kat, and sort of her self-esteem has sort of been knocked a few yards as a result of this. And Phil continuously says he's bust and he doesn't have any money, but it doesn't really seem to stop him from making money, and it doesn't stop a large number of his detractors and his audience from basically giving him anything he wants at the moment. Especially if it means that there's like a special deal on WWE Champions. Oh, and there was also 6 months of 2020 when Phil basically made nearly $28,000 in that period, and the rewards that people got was him wearing a vest on stream. And there's probably a lot more out there, but that's kind of the gist of it. Darkside Phil, insofar as like any newcomer needs to know, is sort of just one of those guys who just sort of pretends a lot about how bad and how screwed his situation is, because he acts as though he is completely out of the loop when we know a lot of the problems are entirely of Phil's making, and yet he doesn't use words like "I'm sorry," "it was my fault." Phil he's probably a lot more successful than many other lolcows in many ways, but unfortunately for Darkside Phil, not unfortunate for me, is that he is still, when you're blowing nearly $100,000 on a mobile game, you're still begging for money, and that money is just gonna go, including taxpayers' money as well, because he claims WWE champion on his taxes, which, again, that's got to be some kind of fraud. Some law has been broken somewhere in this. You got to wonder why Phil has not been back in court or anything like that. But maybe it's something to do with the state of Washington, or maybe it's just, I don't know. I don't know, and it would probably have to be answered by somebody who knows more about the legislation of tax better than I do. But with all that being said and done, let's actually get into the podcast itself. The most hated man on the internet? Question mark. We'll wait and see. I don't know. I did spend nearly an hour talking about Andrew Ditch yesterday, so how can Phil be worse than Andrew Ditch? Because Andrew Ditch is just about as bad as it gets. Now, here we go. Oh yeah,
Side Scrollers is brought to you by you. If you'd like to support the show, head over to patreon.com/sidescrollers. It's time for Side Scrollers on youtube.com. With me, Stuttering Craig. You got a goal? Go get it. Adam Krigler.
Hey,
Blabs.
I want sunshine, I want flowers, and I need it now.
And producer extraordinaire, Travis Key.
Hi, guys.
And brought to you by you, the G2 community, at patreon.com/sidescrollers. And now, broadcasting from our homes, it's time for the #1 gaming and entertainment podcast on planet Earth. It's time for Side Scrollers.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome on out to Side Scrollers on youtube.com. What's going on, everybody? Hey, I'm Stuttering Craig. Welcome to the #1 gaming and entertainment podcast on planet Earth, Side Scrollers. Big show today, huh? Hey, everybody, great to see you. Joining us, as always, not Travis Keys. Travis is going to be manning up on the chat today because we know the chat is going to be super busy. Blabs will also be hailing up on social media. So big ups to Blabs and big ups to Travs for doing that. But joining us, as always, Mr. Freeze, the greatest gamer in the room. It's Adam Krigler. Hello, Adam.
I'm never gonna live that Mr. Freeze down, but I kind of like it actually. I gotta learn all of Arnold's really cheesy puns from that movie, so I can drop those periodically throughout the episodes.
I think that'd really endear you to all those who love the freezing aspect of you, for sure. So
I can't believe I'm still freezing. Anyway,
we have an additional guest too. It looks like in your lap.
Yeah, this is Osiris. He's hanging out. Say hi, buddy. He's like, no, I'm trying to chill. All right, he's chilling.
Excellent.
He wants a treat. Yeah, he's hanging.
Before we get to our guest today, I want to let you guys know some things we have coming up on the show that I think are actually really, really important. And hopefully you guys will want to come back for. I know we got a lot of folks coming in today. Hopefully you guys want to hit the subscribe button and join us, because we are a show. We go every Monday through Friday at 11 o'clock Central Standard Time. The whole idea of Side Scrollers is it's meant to be a breath of fresh air. It's meant to be a place where common sense reigns supreme, something that is very hard to find in the gaming industry. But we do have some great guests coming up. Obviously, today we have Darkside Phil, who'll be joining us very, very.
Oh, God. Okay, so wow, how they got the angry video game nerd for this. God, wow, what a show this must be. Like, really? And listen, I don't know James Rolfe personally, but I've been watching the Angry Video Game Nerd for at least like 10 years. This guy is like one of the most positive influences I've on the internet, and he's been doing this for 20 years. This guy is basically like Sigma Darkside Phil. Darkside Phil is the Darkside Phil, unfortunately, of the internet, but this is like GOAT right here, and that's fantastic. And I don't necessarily know who Mark the Cyborg is, but Good ups, by the way. This should be fun.
Shortly. We also have Mark the Cyborg joining us, and James Rolfe, the angry video game nerd, will be joining us here in the next couple weeks as well. So make sure you guys once again hit the subscribe button, come join us, and be a part of our great little positive community we have going on over here. In addition, if you guys are listening to us over on Spotify or iHeartRadio, make sure you guys hit the 5-star rating and, of course, give us a nice comment over there. And if you guys are watching over here on YouTube, please hit the thumbs up. We'd greatly appreciate that. As always, you can support the show over at patreon.com/sidescrollers. We greatly appreciate that. You get access to our post show, which will be happening directly after today's stream. We'll continue as Adam, and we'll probably bring in Blabs and Travis, and we'll kind of talk about everything that goes on today. With that said, today's show is obviously a little bit different. Usually we kind of talk news and we talk about fun stuff. Today we're diving in deep with, I guess some would say, the most hated man on the internet. We are doing an interview format, and this is something that was not meant to happen when initially asked to bring Phil on the show, but it's quickly morphed into that. I've talked about how I have this degree in.
Now, I kind of did want to ask the question almost right off the bat, but why did Phil want to do this interview? Was it because of what happened? Well, it's probably because he was paid a lot. That's probably the reason why. I don't know if it could be said it was almost exactly the same as what Keemstar. Well, it couldn't have been, but it's if there was any motivation whatsoever, it's probably got to be for money. That's probably what it's going to be, because I'm not entirely convinced Phil went on this to amend his reputation, because let's face it, the most hated man on the internet, the king of hate, these are not monocles you want. No, sir.
Journalism that I got 20 years ago, and I haven't used it. And there's a reason why I didn't go into that field. It's because it sucks. And journalism is just trash bag of an industry. It's just a huge business, and we can talk about that all day long. But
okay. It has nothing to do with your abilities as a journalist.
Okay. Well, but I would like to point out that I am no journalist. I am no journalist.
Okay.
And I think that's the biggest thing. Is I have a degree, but I am not a journalist by any way, shape, and form. But with that said, we are going to do our best today. We know there's a lot of questions and comments and concerns, and we're going to touch them all because we've been assured that nothing is off the table today, and we're going to go for as long as we need to go for everyone to feel as good as you can possibly feel, which is next to impossible, because we can solve cancer. We can cure cancer today and find out who shot JFK, and it still won't be good enough for some people. And you know what?
The CIA.
Easy.
Sorry. I'm good.
Established. But with all that said, we're going to go today, and I'm looking forward to diving in deep. And so I guess with all that said, let's get into this. I'm excited to bring on Darkside Phil. Phil, how are you?
Holy crap.
Phil, the camera's on now.
You guys actually did it. I'm on
We
the
did
show.
what?
I'm on the
You
show.
did it.
I mean,
Wait,
you guys
is he here?
Listen. You guys,
I
you
can't
had a
hear
good
you.
run.
I can't hear you.
Hello?
I'm just joking. I can hear you.
Okay.
You guys have had a good run. You've been going for a month. I've watched every episode. It's a great show. However, you made the big mistake of having me on your show. As of today, March 16th, you guys are officially canceled. I'm sorry. It's over.
You can't cancel something that doesn't care to be.
That does... You know what? Considering what I know, that did not... It sounded like almost like a threat. I know it probably wasn't, but DSP has also said some things he's probably meant to be his jokes, but he doesn't say them with degrees of irony behind them. Like one time he threatened to smash his new PS5 over somebody's face because it apparently arrived 5 minutes before blah blah blah. Let's see where this goes. Oh god. Does Phil appear on the whole? Oh god, this most replay pod 3 hours in. Oh god, what on earth could happen?
Canceled, and we don't really care to be canceled. You can't, so
We're sponsored by the people out there, so we're good. We're great.
Exactly. When you're not worrying about what sponsor you're going to freak out today because you accidentally said something in the wrong way, it's a lot of relief. You can just be honest with your audience, and that's something that I love about what I do on the internet.
It's also probably why you've got perpetual... Well, he claims he's got perpetual money issues because no sponsor would want to tie themselves down with somebody who is that controversial. Listen, here's the... You guys probably already knew that. I know that, but let's just... In case you didn't, I suppose, and, well... Oh, God, is this what the whole thing's going to be like? It's just going back and forth?
Well, let's get into this, man. I'm excited to have you on. I think this is going to be a really telling, hour, 2 hours, whatever it may be, 3 hours,
12 hours,
6 days, however long it may be. So I was told pretty much after we announced this that you were coming on the show. I was told that you should not come on. I was told not to interview you. Why do you think that is?
Well, I mean, considering the fact that the name of the show is, possibly the most hated guy on the internet, I don't think it's rocket science. People don't like me for various different reasons. And, they come at me with so many accusations, so many crazy conspiracy theories. And I'm just a small-time guy trying to make content on the internet and make a living doing it and loving.
Okay, first of all, that's not true. You know what? I know we're a little bit early into this, but you know what? Let me showcase you something, guys. That'll probably open your eyes a little bit. Where is DSP Gaming? Small time, he calls it. He's nearly at 250,000 subscribers on the internet. Phil, I will always be small time in comparison to this. I mean, look, that's my graph. That's his. You know what I mean? It's one of these things is not like the others.
The interaction I have with my little audience, and every time that I address it, any of the stuff that they say about me, it's completely counterproductive. It doesn't help anything. It just exacerbates worse. So why have me on a show when people feel like all I'm going to do is not answer the questions you're going to ask me, not provide any additional information to things I've already said? People think I'm just going to be here for a fluff piece or something, like you guys are going to kiss my butt for 2 hours or so. I don't think so. I think this is an opportunity for me to come on a show and be honest, transparent as much as I can. Again, I've already said this up front. I got to protect my family. I got to protect my business. I can't be showing ridiculous personal information about any of that. But at the same time, the reason that I feel this interview will be different from what they're expecting is because I am going to be an open book. On my streams, I try to curtail the nonsense. My viewers are not there to hear me talk about my bankruptcy. They're not there to talk about accusations of spending $100,000 on a mobile game or how I groomed someone in the past. This is ridiculous nonsense. They're just there to listen to gameplay. They want to see me play a video game or talk about news or something. And every time it brings up, oh God, he's doing it again. He's entertaining the trolls. Why is he doing it? So now, this interview will be an opportunity for me to finally open up about all these topics. Nothing is off the table. I've said this to the guys here. Ask me anything. I will address every single thing anyone wants to ask me. I don't know how much I can talk about it. Again, there's some legal things going on and everything, but we'll talk. And this will be the focal point from now on. You want answers to all the drama? Watch Side Scrollers from March 16, 2023. Phil addressed it.
Why is it that Scott and Adam are already sort of... Yeah. I'm not sure. Let's see. Let's take Phil at face value at this. Let's say he is going to set the record straight. Let's take his word for this. I want to see where this goes.
And if you don't believe him, that's okay. It's everyone's subjective ability to judge whether or not someone's being truthful or not, right? So you can't make someone believe you, but at least we'll have one situation where I sat down, I answered every question that you threw at me, and even if you don't ask certain questions, I'm probably going to bring up topics that I know people want answers to, so that way it's all out there, and then we can just move on. I don't want to have this crap on my content anymore. I just want to move on with my community and breathe a sigh of relief after today, and I'm hoping that some closure will come out of this.
So nothing's off the table today. We can talk about whatever we want to talk about, which is great. I feel good about that, and I think that's one of the things that, once again, there's going to be things that we're going to talk about that I feel is, as long as you're honest, and we're going to push you on things, Phil. You need to understand that we're going to push you, and I think the one thing I said over and over again is I feel that I'm a fair interviewer to myself, fair interviewer to the person I'm interviewing, and fair to the audience. And that's one thing to keep in mind as we go along here. So I guess
could I very briefly just make one statement before?
Sure.
Okay. Oh god.
I want to publicly apologize to you guys, to your other hosts, to the G2s, and anyone else who likes side scrollers, because for the past 2 weeks, you guys have seen your content derailed because of me. I never intended for that. I kind of was worried it would happen, and it happened. I don't control this black cloud that follows me around the internet as much as I try, but I still.
Actually, no, Phil. You knew you could have. You know you could have done that. Don't patronize us. You know immediately you could have done something about that. Like, it's just you know, Phil. Don't pretend like you don't.
Feel bad about it. It's not your fault that because you decided to have me on your show as a regular guest that now you had to put up with 2 weeks of drama and nonsense. I'm hoping this again will put some closure to it as well. It's not just about me, it's about you guys also being able to say, okay, we did it, we had the interview, and can we get back to normality? I love your show. I am a longtime fan of Screw Attack. I used to watch everything you guys were putting out in the mid-2000s before YouTube was even prominent. I've watched every episode of your show since you rebooted it. I'm so upset that this has become about me somehow, and I'm done with it. Like, that's why I want to apologize to everyone. Never intended, and I hope that we can move on from it today.
So, Phil, you just killed our show by giving us an endorsement. Thanks, man. Appreciate that.
Oh, you're horrible. You guys suck. I hate you. Oh, you're going to ask me terrible questions today. I really hate you guys.
All right. Well, let's get into some of these terrible questions. And I think this is something that I've heard. The questions that I'm going to ask today, they're a good mix of questions that have been on the internet. They've been questions that I want to know. There's questions that some of your biggest detractors have asked me to ask you.
Oh God.
So they're, and I think that's important. I want to get all sides of this. So I think a great starting point for here is when you're streaming, Phil, who is streaming? Is it Phil or Darkside Phil?
Whew. Well, it depends on, okay. It depends on what I'm streaming. It also depends on what time period you're talking about. Today, you're pretty much almost getting 100% the real me. Of course, every once in a while, it's funny to over-dramatize something that's going on. I have a segment on my podcast called Old Man Yells at Cloud, where, I really ham it up if it's a dumb topic I'm talking about, and I over-dramatize like I'm so concerned about it. Or if I'm playing a game that really is...
Phil, I know it's probably just Phil is just putting himself out there, but but Phil is kind of stressed. He seems as though he's a little bit, you know what I'm trying to say? He seems a little bit, like he really wants to get this off. He really wants people to believe in this.
I'm dying a lot, or I'm playing an online fighting game. I'll emphasize the fact that, it's unfair, it's bullshit, I'll always ham it up. But that's kind of my shtick. That's always been kind of my shtick, and I think my actual fans know that. But, the internet wants to pretend like otherwise. As if you have never watched my content over the past 15 years that I've been a content creator on the internet, you would have seen this is kind of the shtick that I do in certain situations. But today, I am so different than how I used to be. When you've made content for 15 years, you go through several different stages and evolutions. And, when I started on YouTube way back when, it was all about being a character. It was about over-exaggerating. It was about being dramatic. It was about saying the risque thing that's going to get people talking. What did Darkside Phil say in his playthrough today? Are you kidding me? I can't believe he said that. But what happens is over time, things change, and there was really, how can I...
Now, okay, here's my first point. Okay, here we go. Yes, people can take things out of context. Yes, that's very easy to do. What is actually really easy to do, however, is, analyze and interpret. Sometimes it's just how things are meant to be. Sometimes it's just people doing it for fun. There are some things that, just to give you one example, I'm a huge fan of the streamer Vexoria the Sun Eater, and her husband Zolon comes in, and he does like a lot of work for her behind the scenes, and they play around, and it's just meant to be quite honest, quite what they call lewdsome fun, because it's just meant to be like everyday fun shenanigans with with what they do. And again, that's the sort of thing where their things get taken out of context. Like, a bunch of wacky things happen, but it's never about like anything to do about a spite. You know, the tone of the streams are very, very consistent, and they're very regular for what they are deciding to do. They are entertainers. They entertain their audience, and yeah, it's absolutely fine to do that. Now, the problem with Phil is that we can tell is that he takes things up very, very seriously, and unfortunately, whenever he doesn't do this, he is, well, his sense of humor is, well, borderline extreme and borderline very, very untasteful. Like, what was it he said that was a contributing factor when he lost his Twitch partnership, that we're selling her off to slaves or something like that, amongst all the racial slurs against Chinese people that he did. Oh yeah, I've looked into those, by the way, and even if you take those sorts of things out of context, it's very hard to say Phil was doing it for a joke. He might have been joking about it, but unfortunately the joke is not very funny. It's funny to the eyes and ears of the people who think, you can't say that, but in the long run, it's not a really good idea. I'm pretty sure I've watched a few episodes of... I mean, I'm not like the world's biggest fan of South Park, only because I haven't really seen enough of it to actually gain a full-on opinion about it. But I can tell they would probably make episodes about this sort of thing, and all the better for doing it, I suppose. So let's continue.
Say almost like an epiphany to me. In 2017, a lot of different things changed in my life. I had a lot of things that kind of rebooted. And business-wise, one of the things that rebooted was I went from being someone who focused on on-demand content, you know, videos that you would digest and watch offline, versus being an interactive online streamer. And when I became an interactive online streamer, I realized, wow, wait a minute. I've been doing this wrong the whole time, because like for, 8+ years, I've just been talking to a camera and pretending like I'm the only one in the room. I have an audience live watching me. What the hell am I doing? I'm ignoring them. And once I started having an interactive conversation with my audience, it became so much better, this social experience of having meaningful conversations, seeing their live reactions to things I'm doing on stream. And so I realized I don't have to be careful.
I suppose that's also good as well, that Phil has like embraced the idea that he sort of went through a change in identity and how he went to approach things. And that's good, because over time, for like long-term content creators, you do see shifts in their behavior and just how they take things on board. Like, when I was still watching Nostalgia Critic, you remember how he would have like those very long segment, like live action segments where they do like little skits about things that are supposed to tie into what they're talking about. And you remember how, and again, like post 2021, when I started watching Nostalgia Critic very regularly again, is that he kind of seemed to have dropped many of those segments, or at least condensed them into being about 3 minutes per episode he did. And I like Malcolm and Tara and stuff like that. They are fantastic additions to the show, but I think just it doesn't need to be overly complicated, or if anything, that the disaster that was Doug Walker's review of Pink Floyd's The Wall, if anything to show, is that there's no reason why you can't just have things... You don't need to be that quirky to be good.
Character anymore. I could just be me. I could just talk with these people and be honest about my feelings about games or whatever. And again, yes, every once in a while there's an exaggeration. Absolutely. But that's part of the fun of it all. You know, we're not all just here to be Mr. Serious all day. How boring would that be? But at the same time, yeah, today I would say I'm a lot more laid back of a person, and I'm a lot more honest and transparent with my audience, with the discussions we have. Although every once in a while,
I suppose you could argue that Phil maybe should have just took his own advice and he kept things relatively consistent, because it's for the same reason that whenever I talk about like music on one of my other channels, it is usually very self-contained to whatever the song is about, and I don't waffle on about things that happen in my life that I can say or talk about. I only would really ever bring things like that up if they were at all necessary or relevant, or they played any sort of role in the song or in the story in question. It's for the same reason why, keeping that tone consistent and keeping it relevant is absolutely what it should be about. And maybe I'm just consider myself very fortunate that I have not really fallen into the realm of people taking things out of context, because you can't really get any dirt on people if they don't, give you anything to work off, or if they do say things or do things out of context. With context, you can sort of work out what it is, and if it's it eliminates situations like that entirely. But again, as I said before, the problem with Phil is that even with context, a lot of the things he's said in the past don't make him look very clever. Let alone when the things are said out of context.
Oh yes, there's obviously everyone wants to every once in a while ham it up and be a cartoon character, joke a little bit to get a little laugh or a little rise. But for the most part, I would say what you see today in my content is more authentic than it used to be.
So Darkside Phil is your hamming it up, and right now you're just Phil.
Yes and no. Again, I mean, it's cool to be.
Well, what is it? Like, what does it when you say there are times that I'm over the top? Give me an example of what that means. What does it mean when you say, well, I'm over the top, and why would you, if the internet has changed, right? There was a point. You are correct in saying that back in the early 2000s, when you kind of rose to prominence, there was, you took your personality and you put in a little, it would exponentially make it a little more over the top. But the internet has changed to authenticity. People want to get to know, and I don't disagree with you there. But when you mix up, and it's almost like you're sending mixed signals to your audience, and most people, they haven't watched you for 15 years. The idea of saying like, hey, I've been on the internet for 15 years. You should know.
Again, to bring back what I said about Doug Walker, aka the Nostalgia Critic, is that I do like to imagine there is a very definitive split between the two. Nostalgia Critic is this sort of pompous, poncy, very up on himself and very self-righteous about his opinions about movies. He thinks he's cleverer than everyone else. He's quite obnoxious. But it's only because, remember, the real Doug Walker studied about films when he was in Chicago. This was a guy who basically fell in love with the world of cinema so much that, well, he wanted to spend his days talking about them. So it's sort of it's the self-obsessed. It's like the Nostalgia Critic is Doug Walker's inner child, and if he could let all that fly, then that's absolutely fine. I think when it comes to like personalities on the internet, it's all right if it's just sort of people can discern the difference, if whether or not somebody's playing it serious or not. But I suppose it all comes down to whether you believe that they are playing it off as a joke. I mean, tell me, because I have not seen this guy for years. What about a popular movie internet critic? Is it Brad Jones, who plays like the Cinema Snob? For those who don't remember, Cinema Snob was this guy who, I think it was some sort of like in-story thing where he had been demoted to literally talking nothing other than B movies. You know what a B movie is. It's a movie that basically has like half or even a quarter or maybe even a tenth of the budget that's like an actual Hollywood blockbuster would have. And it's full of campy effects, cheesy dialogue, terrible acting. It would have a lot of things in it that just, you would obviously say that's not good, but how can you blame them? It, like, for movies like Manus, The Hands of Fate, Nuki, which is meant to be just this rip-off of E.T., and Brad, to absolutely give this man his flowers, he talks about them with the kind of cynicism and the kind of snobbishness that you would see out of, let's say, the Times newspaper. He talks about them as though he's sort of meant to be taking them seriously, which there's a great irony in that. But then again, you have to remember these movies were probably produced with the intention that, again, cheap and kind of run down and low as they were trying to create something for the world to see. And Brad, again, to give him his absolute credit, is that he's still quite funny to watch, and he doesn't go into the realms like he doesn't like try to be condescending or try to educate in the same sort of way, saying that the reason why this doesn't work is because you consider the dramatic irony and look at the mise en scène and how it's confused and how it doesn't know what to focus on. They don't talk about stuff like that. They just talk about what they can see and if it's any good whatsoever. It's all very consistent, and it's Brad has been doing it for almost about the same time as Doug Walker has. But again, if we're going into this discussion about if it's Phil, I don't really believe there's like any discernible difference between Darkside Phil and Philip Burnell, because as far as we are concerned, or at least as far as we've seen, there's no real point in which you could say, I could believe he would say that, versus it's somebody in character who would say that. I mean, I think it's as simple as that, because it's still the same person at the end of the day who's doing and saying all these things. But it's I don't know, maybe Phil could have possibly invested in the idea of like doing some sort of like character for the internet, at least like instead of the King of Hate, turn it into an anger of sorts. Although, with that being said, we probably would have gotten another, like, Bison incident, like in 2021. You remember what that was like. DSP got a Bison hat from Street Fighter or something like that, and basically people said he was Pigler because, well, it looked very, very reminiscent to Adolf Hitler. And Phil acted as he normally does. But with that being said, let's continue.
Know how I act, but the reality is that most people see you through clips, through Twitter or YouTube, and they don't know you. So regardless of how long you've been on the internet, I mean, I've been doing this forever, and the vast majority of people watching right now have no idea who I am. So you treat every viewer like a potential new viewer. So I don't know, kind of walk me through that, because I do think that's kind of, like, provide me with an example of what DSP is versus Phil.
Sure. Right now I'm playing a game. It's called Wolong Fallen Dynasty. All right. It's one of these games made by Team Ninja, not FromSoft, but it's very much meant to be like a From Software style game, like Dark Souls or Bloodborne or Elden Ring. It's ultra challenging. Things are going to kill you with 1 to 2 hits, right? In my opinion, this is my opinion, it's not very good. A lot of people disagree with me. They love this game. Okay, I don't like it. I think that it's a cheap knockoff. I feel like it's very wonky. It's not polished. I will say those things in my content. But in the heat of the moment, if I'm running through a stage and I get, instant kill, cheap death, I freak out. Oh, you son of a bitch, this game sucks ass. It's the worst game ever. The game devs don't know what they're doing, blah, blah, blah. That's the Darkside Phil over-the-top persona kind of coming through. I could just sit here and say nothing and be like, that sucked that I died. People don't really tune in for that. In fact, the reason people are watching me play that game is because they want to see that over-the-top reaction. So I'll ham it up every once in a while. I don't hate the game. I don't hate the game devs. Of course I don't. They tried to make a good game. I think it's decent. I don't think it's great. But, you'll go over the top every once in a while. Now, just like you said...
But is that just something that Phil would do also?
Right.
Well, Phil would do that, but Phil wouldn't be like, for example, okay, the game killed me. It's a cheap death. Do you really think that I'm that upset about it? It's a game. It's a big deal.
Everyone gets triggered by games. I mean,
I get triggered, exactly, and I allow that to flow freely. A lot of people put a filter over what they say and do when they put out their content. Why? Because they're trying to be marketable, right? They're trying to say, I want that sponsor. I want that opportunity. I have never filtered.
Why is he even saying, like, folding his arms when he says that? Phil, yes, some people would absolutely love more than anything, but what about people who just want to, like, play video games and just have fun with it and just have fun and have a good time? Phil, I get the idea that Phil wants to take this seriously, but what about just from the perspective of people who just want to do this as a hobby like I do? Does it, yeah, I think it's... Phil takes it more seriously than I think he's willing to let on, which, again, it's fine, I suppose, but it's that Phil is pretending he's fine and he's okay, but I feel like he's sort of annoyed a little bit because I don't know if it's because he can't get his point across, or people are not hearing him out.
Myself on the internet. That's why a lot of people don't like me, because they don't want truthful reactions. They want Mr. Marketable, Mr. Smiley. And when I say things like, oh, this game I really don't like because this
That's not the only reason people dislike you, though, Phil, though, is it? But we'll get to that later, I imagine.
is unfair, do you think that game companies are happy about it? Of course not. But
but Phil, hold on. Like, do you think that they're really? Do you think that those game companies are like looking to establish a relationship with like they're not? I mean, the reality is that these companies are looking for streamers who stream to 5,000, 10,000 people,
Correct.
as opposed to a couple hundred. And
That's right.
Like what? Whether it's you saying or DSP saying it, I don't. I think that if people were watching to see those over the top reactions, I think they were watching for that a decade ago, and I really mean that, right? So look, I had a character named Evil Craig, right? And Evil Craig was meant to be the essence of just the internet troll, right? I did it for 10 episodes, 12 episodes, whatever it may be, and I stopped doing it because I realized that I was growing an audience of people that were negative and trolls, right? And it was funny, and it was so silly. But by you starting with the idea of saying like, look, I'm going to overreact big, I think there's two prongs to this question. Number one, if people were really watching to see your over the top reactions, don't you think they'd be making clips of that instead of other clips that they were making, and those would be going viral? And number two, if you're really not enjoying the game, why play it? Why play it in the first place?
that's a great question. That's something that's actually been.
But start with number one though.
I mean, I suppose. Okay, I'll give you one example I can think of why people would want to do that. Tyler1. I've not heard of this guy for like such a long time, but he was such a prominent League of Legends player, and he almost soloed Draven during his entire time because Tyler1 was, putting his autism aside for 1 second, he was hyper aggressive. He was very, very involved. But Tyler1 is the epitome of what I like to call a larger than life character. Except it wasn't really a character. That was just, when you saw Tyler1, it was just, that was everything. He was a former, like, he played college football. He withdrew when he was at college. He settled down to play League of Legends. He was ID banned from Riot Games. He ventured out. He tried different things. He grew, but he was still kind of the same person. He was still very hyper aggressive because part of his condition was that sometimes it was just hard for him to understand certain things about the world and how they work. And he was so, like, pumped up with aggression and rage. It was entertaining to watch. But I couldn't really watch Tyler 1 for more than I'd say about half an hour, because his shrieking and his tantrums, they did sort of become a little bit overwhelming, I suppose. I mean, like, geez, Tyler, what are you doing? What are you doing screaming at me? Why was it my phone? I'm just trying to watch. What's going on? It's the same reason why I don't really watch shows like, Bar Rescue, because yes, John Taffer is very professional. Well, he flips out because that's the sort of thing that generates views, because it was tried and tested in things like Kitchen Nightmares. But then again, John Taffer knows fine well how easy it is for people to get sick through things like food poisoning, through alcohol poisoning, through dirt and mold growing in places. Yes, John Taffer is very over the top, but again, that's only because he knows BS when he sees it, and he will absolutely want people to succeed, but it means a certain level of tough love. And bear in mind, John Taffer started life out as a bouncer. I don't think he's particularly... the idea of, tough love hasn't exactly gone over his head, if that makes sense. But I think the problem, again, when it comes to Phil, is that he's sort of... his anger comes across as a bit too legitimate. Like, he's not trying to play things off. He's not trying to be overdramatic about it. He's just angry. That's just, he comes across as just very angry. And the sort of angry where he doesn't swear. He doesn't stomp his feet. It's one where you could just feel inside he is just... If he could say the worst things in the world, he probably would, because, well, he looks like he just wants to, just to get it off him.
Or number one, like, what if people were watching to see your over-the-top angry reactions, don't you think they'd be clipping those as opposed to clipping other things?
In truth, yes. I don't know what they clip because I have so much stuff on the internet about me that I don't really watch a lot of it. I hear it secondhand from my viewers or in a chat or whatever. No, I understand what you're saying, totally. Case in point with Wolong, there's totally some people who are turned off by this playthrough, and they're like, I don't want to watch Phil play it because he's going to get angry, and he's going to turn into this rage ball that we don't like watching. We like seeing the real Phil. At the same time, there are people who I've told my audience, I don't like this game. I would like to move on. This kind of does meld into the second half of your question as well. I've been very transparent with my audience about this game. So I don't like it. I feel like if I'm going to play a FromSoft game, why don't we just do a second run of Elden Ring, a new game plus run? And a lot of people are down for that. And others are like, no, Phil, we like seeing you rage. This has been a part of your shtick for 15 years. This is a lot of the reason why we tune in. I'm seeing more attendance on my Wolong streams, and I'm getting more, honestly, more support on my Wolong streams because they want to see that rage come out of me as opposed to me playing a bunch of games where I'm more laid back and relaxed and chill. Okay,
so I'm just going to sort of like come to like the end of this first part, and we're only 20 minutes into this. Okay, this could be nearly, I can predict this is going to be about 13 hours long, but I'm going to break it down to you guys like this. One of my all-time favorite streamers, like now, currently, is Asmongold. Now, the reasons for this is because it's not just his like gameplay of things like World of Warcraft and particularly his Dark Souls streams. And if you are very familiar with his original run of Dark Souls, you will know it's both one of the most frustrating and yet one of the most entertaining and fascinating watches if you've ever watched anybody do like gameplay of a video game, because Asmongold straight up just headbutts his way into every situation. He doesn't take any advice. He doesn't read the things that are just in front of him. McConnell pops up every frequently just to laugh and just say either get good or Asmund, I've got some advice. You know, and he just clowns around and stuff like that. And you see Asmund stumble, trip, die, fail, fall flat on his face almost every step of the way until he actually sort of starts getting a handle on things. He settles down. He focuses a bit more on what's going on in front of him. I mean, to be fair, listen, a From Software game is what it is. They don't really hold your hand. And they just say, well, you know what? Learn what you can and put it into practice and get into the spirit, get into the handle of trying to be good, because it's not going to get any easier from here on in. And to be fair, we've seen, as I've watched Asmongold do Dark Souls 1, 2, 3, Bloodborne, Sekiro. Sekiro, by the way, was the game that Asmongold basically rage quit on after 4 hours, because it was so unlike what he was doing with Dark Souls that he just straight up could not get into the hand of trying to be slower and utilize the stealth mechanics in Sekiro. But then again, Sekiro is such, to my knowledge, a different game anyway. I've never played it myself, but it is such a different experience. If you've ever been a veteran of From Software games, it's fantastic. But once again, it's not just about when Asmongold fails and rages and he looks just completely exasperated, because some of the mistakes he makes are quite basic, even for someone who's been playing them as long as he has. But it's also whenever things do come up and he has very concrete opinions about them, from his knowledge and extensive knowledge of World of Warcraft, the relationship he had with his parents, the fact that he has said very openly why he lives the life he does and why he wouldn't really trade any of it for the world. How much he loved his mom and how much he just has very, very distinct and very eye-opening opinions about things. It's because Asmongold can swap around and just be very authentic and very true to who he is. And that's like the opposite problem that being a character on the internet has, is that the reason why I do it and I don't really have a character on the internet is that you can't really discern whether a character I'm playing is saying it as that character, or if it's just straight up coming from me. I'm not an actor, ladies and gentlemen. Let's just cut to the chase about that. But what I am is just somebody who has an opinion here or two, and when he's ideally passionate about something, he'll just voice it out and just let it go and stuff like that. And that's perfectly fine too. Some people will agree. Some people will agree. Some people will disagree. The point is that, you know, people hear these suggestions out. They hear you about what you've got to say. And when people hear you about what you've got to say, they have context, and then they will decide whether they like you or not. And then they can decide if it's worth trolling them or worth taking clips out of context to see whether or not their opinions, when stretched to like a larger audience, will hold the same amount of weight. So it's... What was I can't even remember what the original point was, but I suppose it comes down to the fact that, well, that's the thing, is that maybe Phil shouldn't be... Phil is just sort of just being himself whenever I see him on stream anyway, so it's very hard to say about Phil's opinions being different, or they're just sort of always deep down being his own, especially if he's going from the viewpoint of people want to make this successful and make this profitable for what they do, because Phil has that mentality because he's been doing it for so long, in spite of all the controversy. And the controversy is still to come.
I have a bunch of those in my rotation. That's my core fan base will show up for that and support it. But you will always get a different group of people. That really, I feel, is one of the reasons why I'm still here 15 years later. I have different audiences. I have one audience that'll come and watch me be the real Phil. The relaxed Phil. I just sit back, I'm chilling, I'm playing a game. I'm not going to rage.
You are having a laugh, Phil. Relaxed is not the word I would use to describe you.
The game's, nothing really too challenging, right? I'm playing Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion right now. That's exactly what that playthrough is. It's relaxing, right? But then when I play Wolong, now it's time for that old Dark Side Phil to come back out, and now a whole new audience shows up. It's funny because you'll watch one of my streams, you'll say, well, Phil gets around 200 to 400 viewers a stream, okay? But in reality, when you look at my metrics on YouTube, or my analytics, actually, those are like thousands of different people. One stream gets 200 viewers, the next stream gets 300. Those are 500 different people, because people are coming for different kinds of content. When you've been around as long as me, you realize you get people from all over the world and for different reasons. If I were to...
But are they sticking? Are they staying, though? Because if you have 500 people come in and they're just kind of coming out, that's actually bad for the algorithm. That's bad. You want people to stay and subscribe, and you have these new people coming in because they want to see a new game, not necessarily because they want to see you. Right? They're interested in the game, not necessarily you. If you're playing a game that's topical or new or something along those lines.
Again, yes and no. I would say back in the day that was the case. Like new releases, I would get ginormous spikes in attendance because I actually used to have DSP Gaming, which is my gaming channel, used to be one of the more prominent gaming channels for Let's Players on YouTube over a decade ago. I was in the algorithm. I play a new game, I would see my attendance double, triple, just because I'm playing a new game. I don't get that anymore. It's been, and there's some of the things we'll probably talk about today. One of the reasons was why that happened. Trolling activities, false copyright strikes, it kicked my channel out of the algorithm. So today, it doesn't really matter what I play, honestly. I mean, yes, I'll play a new game and I'll get a little bit of a spike. But as for audience retention, it really depends on what I'm playing and who's there for what. There's some people that don't care what I play. I could sit here and play.
Right, you got your hardcore. You got your hardcore. You can play Tiddlywinks and people will show up, right?
Exactly. But
right,
I will get an increase when I play a rage-inducing game or a multiplayer game where there's going to be an element of challenge where I can.
I'll just say this, and I'm gonna cut the first part here. If Phil really wanted to play like a rage-inducing game, play Poker Online, play against Bossman Jack, because nothing is more tilting than watching people lose thousands of dollars right in front of their eyes, and Yeah, listen, there's nothing almost worse than that. That will drive people insane, that would. But I'm not going to recommend that because it's probably it is incredibly insubstantial, or if it is substantial, it won't be substantial for very, very long. Trust me, I've seen this happen. I'm not old to this song and dance because I've seen it happen way, way too many times.